Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll show you how I made these autumn bases for my Stormcast Eternals. You can use this method for any game system, but I wanted something that contrasted really nicely with the black and green theme that I went with for my Stormcast Eternals. The techniques in the video will work for all different size bases from 25mm up, but I'll be using these nice big oval bases so you can get a good look at exactly how I'm doing each stage. Let's start looking at all the ingredients then. So the first thing I use is some super glue. I really like this Loctite super glue power gel. I'll put a link in the description down below if you want to find it. It's got lots of control, comes out nice and thick, whereas these cheaper ones are very runny and take longer to set, but they still do the job. Then I've got some different twigs and little branches that I picked up from my local woods and then dried out in the oven. And so I've got a bunch of these in all different sizes. Here's some medium ones that I've trimmed down as well. And then you can see in amongst this gravel, I've just got some very tiny bits too. Then with this gravel, I've already sprayed it. I put loads out on a big sheet of cardboard and sprayed it all. And then there's one side that hasn't been sprayed, which is the side I'll glue to the base. I'll also be using some skulls, and I've gone with an orc skull theme for all my Stormcast Eternals. A few human skulls in there as well, but most of the big ones like this will be the orc ones. And a little time-saving tip is to take your sprue of Citadel skulls, or any other brand, and spray them all when they're on the sprue. And then all you've got to do is paint the little bit that's left when you trim them away from the sprue later on. But a great way to get them all primed really quickly. I'm also going to be using some grass tufts, these are winter ones, and these really cool little flowers like meadow flowers. I'm going for pink and orange, but you could certainly use red or yellow for this if you want them to stand out a little bit more, but I want the effect to be quite subtle. These are all from Gamer's Grass, and I've done a video recently on these when I did the jungle bases that really shows off these awesome products. I'll make sure to put links to all of this in the description down below. Then once we've got all these glued to the base, I'm going to paint Skeleton Horde on the skulls, Militarum Green on the rocks, and then that's going to have a dry brush of Rakarth Flesh, and that'll tie in with my Age of Sigmar Warcry terrain. Then I've got this flocking, which is really coarse, cheap flocking, but it's quite dark, very dark green, almost black. That's going to help just to make it a little bit richer in colour. I've got the Vallejo Thick Mud. This stuff's fantastic. What a great basing material. There's all different bits in here, as you'll see later, which really give lots of texture to it. And then one of my favourite products recently, the Autumn Leaf Litter. This stuff's so cool, real vibrant, looks awesome on the base, and for hardly any effort, you can get a really nice detailed finish to your bases. I'll be using this Citadel texture tool, but you could easily use a coffee stirrer in place of that, no problem. Right, let's get started then. So the first step is to do like a dry fit. So I'm looking at the base, looking at the different sticks and twigs I've got, and just arranging it in different ways until I like the look of it. I don't want this hanging over the edge too much, so I'm just going to position it where I think it looks kind of natural as well, almost like the logs have fallen onto each other, because these would be trees really when you scaled it down. And then I'm going to glue them in place. I've only got a little bit of this gel glue left at the moment, so I'm using that for the larger pieces. But ideally, I would use this for every step of this build, because it just sets so fast, and it's really good stuff. So I'm going to pin that in place there, let that set, and then start gluing on the second log that's come down on top of it. So getting that last bit of glue out of there, and the little squidgy thing, the squeezer on the side, is really cool for getting some precision glue coming out. Now I'm on to this extra strong super glue now, the cheap runny stuff. You can get this like in packs of 10 for £1 from your local dollar store or pound store. And so I'm just putting this on. You can see it's a lot runnier, less control. It's certainly not going to be neat, but for this can be quite a messy process, so it doesn't really matter. Once it sets, we're going to cover this anyway, and you'll never see all the mess underneath. And then what I'd like to do is just pile up a few rocks as if it's some of the broken ruins, and then I just pour a little bit more glue over the top of some of these as well, just to get them to set, and then adding in the little skulls, trying to arrange it so they're evenly spread out as well. And then just keep going until you're happy with the amount that's on the base. By the time we put the mud and leaves on, a lot of this will be hidden, but some bits will poke through. So I think it's important to really be quite generous at this stage. And then I'm putting on some of these smaller little logs, just randomly in places again, crisscrossing a few of them, trying to make it look as natural as possible. And there you go. Now it's all ready. We can start painting these little parts. So I'll start with a contrast militarum green, nice thick coat all over the rocks, and I'm not being super careful here. Again, it doesn't matter if it goes on the base, it's going to be covered anyway, so I'm just giving that a nice generous cover, and I'll continue to do that across all the little stones. Now on to contrast skeleton horde, and I'll go over all the skulls now, again being nice and generous, really working it into all the recesses. That way we'll get the benefit of the different shading, and then I'm going to just put a little bit over the trees. You don't need to, but I just find it's nice almost to seal it in, but it is dried out in the oven, so you don't really need to do this, but I think it just brings out a little bit more texture. Then when that's dried, I take the Rakarth Flesh base paint, and with a dry brush I'll just go over all the little green stones that we painted earlier. Again, nice and rough, and just to break up that green, and this will tie in again with the Warcry terrain. Now we're on to this brilliant stuff, the Thick Mud Acrylic by Vallejo, and I've done loads of videos on this range if you want to check those out. I'll link to one at the end of this one, but this stuff's particularly good. It's my favourite at the moment. It's got little bits in it, so it really is looking like it's some kind of organic substance on the base. And so I start off by getting a nice big scoop, popping that down, and then just spreading it around, moving that base to make it nice and easy to get all the different angles. I'm doing it on the board here just so I can give you a good look at how it's done, but usually I pick the base up and then I'm constantly adding more, turning it, and rather than turning myself, I'm turning the base just so I can get that tool into all the recesses. Once that's completely covered, I'll start dotting around some of the tufts. Again, we want it to be natural, so I'm trying to just space it out and put it in places where I'd imagine it growing from out amongst the rocks, or where a couple of logs have gone over each other, and the same for the little flowers. I'm imagining areas where the seed would have got trapped in between the little crevices of the rocks and underneath the logs, and so then they've sprouted out, and spreading those colours out, always trying to keep it natural. And then these you can also pull apart, so try and vary that size. That's really nice to give that idea of a natural look too, so having some big clumps, some small ones. And then this is where we're at. So we've got all our little flowers, we've got our tufts, rocks and skulls. Now it's time to start putting on that flock and then finishing with the final effect of the leaves. You don't need to do this stage with the flock, but I think it's just a nice touch. It also prevents too many of the leaves going down, because where this sticks to the base, that's going to cover up some areas, and then the leaves won't be able to stick there. And you'll also see little bits of black coming through. Then I take the leaf litter, and then really important to do this while this mud is wet, obviously, and then I'm putting quite a lot on, really working it underneath the logs as well, and putting loads on there. Try and get a little bit of the mud on the logs as well, and then you'll get little leaves to stick. And then I'm gently pressing down over the leaves. Now I'm doing this when it's completely covered, so that I'm not touching any of the mud with my fingers. And then I'll turn it to the side and upside down, give it a good old tap, get rid of that excess, and then when you can spin it right upside down then, and flick the bottom, and that'll really get those leaves off there that haven't stuck to any of the mud. That's pretty much the modelling stage. Now it's time to tidy up the base, and I just run my finger around, getting rid of the excess earth that's built up there, and then when it's dried you can take a little tool like this or the back of a knife and you can just scrape along, getting rid of all that, making it nice and neat and clean, ready to paint. And to paint the base I went for black. That really makes this orange stand out, so I used base Abaddon black, and I'll give it 2 nice thin coats all the way around, and then that's our build complete. And here we go, so we've gone from a blank base to the one on the right, which is now dried overnight, completely set. And so this is the finish that you'll get once that mud has completely dried and all the leaves have stuck to it. You could go a step further and do something like a watered down PVA to seal it all in, but I find this mud's very strong. As long as you press those leaves down a little bit when you set them in, then they're going to be well stuck. You might lose a few as you transport them, but on the whole, most of these are going to stay well stuck to that base. I did exactly the same process with the smaller bases as well, just putting those little pink and orange flowers coming through, little broken up twigs and the skulls. I went with just very thin, small twigs rather than bigger logs, and so the finish is a little bit more subtle. You haven't got as much room to work with, but using the pink and orange I found worked out really nicely. It wasn't too bright, but worked well against that black. I did all the army in one go except for the dragons, which is the bigger oval bases, so those I did separately just so I could show you here in this video, but doing it all in one stage made the process a lot quicker. And because I went with quite a simple paint scheme, literally just dry brushed it a few different colours on over the black, and then put over coylier green shade over that, and then just went in with the details. By doing that really fast, I just spent a bit more time on the bases, and that vibrant orange really brought them to life and made up for that quick paint scheme. I'll put links to everything I used in the video down in the description down below, so you can easily find it, or some alternatives in your area if you can't get hold of the specific brands. But I hope you found this video helpful and it gave you a good idea about how quick and easy it is to make some pretty colourful and vibrant bases for your models. Thanks so much for watching the video, hope you enjoyed it, and if you did like the video, please hit the like button, subscribe for more videos like this one, and I look forward to seeing you here next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games. A massive thank you to my Patreon supporters for all your support since I started the channel. I couldn't do this without you, thank you so much. If you're interested in supporting the channel and you'd like to find out more about my Patreon community, check out the link in the description down below.